I unzipped my tent and the morning mountain air touched my face. It had rained all night long, and finally, as the final drops of rain ceased, the sun shone upon the valley where my friends and I had established a camp. I'd give everything for a cup of fresh coffee, I thought, and I looked into my fried Lindsay's tent door, which was half unzipped. We usually woke each other up, but this time I only saw Carter inside, asleep. Did she really rise earlier than me? I yawned and went to wash my face. After the rain, the ground turned into mud. And on my way to our improvised washstand, I slipped and almost fell from the steep edge of the ravine. At that moment, I thought I saw my friend's bright yellow coat on the bottom of the ravine. Not the best place for taking a walk. But it was so Lindsay-like to do something of the kind. So I wasn't surprised at all, and I simply called out, "Get up here! What are you doing down there?" When I didn't get the answer, I simply mumbled that she'd eventually regret these tricks and approach the edge of the ravine. The yellow spot wasn't moving. I took my spectacles out of my pocket. I'm still haunted by what I saw. My friend's immobile body was sprawling like a doll on the bottom of the rocky ravine. I don't remember climbing down to Lynn or giving her artificial respiration. My friends who came running when they heard my screams brought me to my senses and then contacted rescuers on the radio. It seemed an eternity passed before Brian, our hiking instructor, broke the general silence. He told us we were too far away from the nearest locality, so the rescuers and the police would arrive no earlier than 3 hours. Carter was squatting next to Lindsay with his eyes glazed, and it seemed he didn't hear what was going on around him. I found it improbable that you could die from falling from less than 5 meters. However, Kate, Lynn's other friend, was complaining about the tricky mountains, rain, and sharp wet stones unanimously with the instructor. They were certain it was an accident. Poor Lindsay had hit her temple, which was bleeding. Soon it began raining again, and everyone hurried to their tents. Even the grieving Carter went. Meanwhile, I decided to inspect the place where Lindsay had died. How had it happened? I'm not the kind of person others would listen to. Quiet and self-conscious. Who's up for hearing the jittery thoughts of the bespectacled gray mouse? But in my quietness, I listened to my intuition, and my spectacles helped me see better. It didn't take me long to figure out that it hadn't been an accident and that Lindsay had been murdered. Several meters from the body, I found a stone with fresh blood. It was quite heavy but would fit in a hand well. A perfect murder weapon. And it was lying too far from Lynn to make me believe she'd fallen on it herself. Somebody from the group had killed her, and they're lying. But who could it be? And why? Or what for? I hid my discovery behind other stones and decided I would find out the truth. I might be meek, but Lynn, I'm not a traitor. And I wasn't going to let the person who claimed to be your friend mask their crime as if it were an accident. I must admit, Lindsay had always been good at finding adventures, especially romantic adventures. She was the total opposite of me. Bright and sexy, Lynn didn't simply enjoy male attention, but also loved using it. Like during her last affair with the man who was much older than her and left his family to be with her. But for Lindsay, that relationship was mere entertainment. I disapproved of such games with feelings of other people. I told my friend it wasn't right many times, but to no avail. When she'd met Carter recently, everyone had hoped this earnest and tacit man would finally help her settle down. Carter was sitting in front of the extinguished fire. I came up to him and asked him cautiously when he'd seen Lindsay last. He was pretty sure that Lynn said she'd needed a bathroom before dawn. It was still dark, so he'd fallen asleep again and hadn't noticed her long absence. However, something else worried me. The other day, he and Lynn had another fight. Later, I even saw her eyes red with tears. The scandals occurred quite too often, as for a couple that had started a relationship recently. What had they been arguing about? Could it have provoked something that was impossible to undo? As I was contemplating all that, Kate appeared right beside us. "Leave him alone, he's grieving," she told me. Once I gave her the nickname, Sticker. To me, Kate and Lynn's friendship was always a mystery. She was cunning, flattering, and envious. She always stuck her nose in others' business and tried to copy Lindsay in everything, even in her liking for Carter. And here was yet another example of it. She was defending him from my interrogation. and all the while she was hanging on his shoulder. It wasn't a secret to me that Kate had always dreamed of stealing him from her friend. Well, she finally got more chances to do it. No matter how disgusted I was, I still had to check out this theory, because the previous night, after everyone else had gone to sleep, Kate stayed in front of the fire with Lindsay. Behind a nearby tree, I found an empty bottle of booze Kate had taken on the hike with her. If you get somebody drunk and then wait for an appropriate moment and hit them with a stone and shove from the edge of a ravine, it could well be served as an accident. But Kate claimed Lindsay had refused to drink with her the other night, and if somebody had really killed Lynn, it couldn't be her, because they would never go to the woods in the dark. She said she had nyctalopia, or night blindness, a condition that made it impossible for her to see in low light. By the way, Kate didn't even have a torch, though it was no secret to anyone she never took anything useful on trips apart from something she could drink or smear over her face. I sat down aside and watched the silent Carter. Kate started packing up. I suddenly realized our instructor was nowhere near. As a suspect, Brian interested me least of all. He was a people's person. He was kind, always cheerful, and the most reasonable among all of us. And he had no motives to harm Lindsay. We didn't know him much, though. I went to look for him and found him in the woods, some distance from the camp. Suddenly, Brian took a turn and went down along a path that brought us the round way to Lynn's body. My heart thumped. I hid behind a bush and watched him unblinkingly. Brian was searching for something. He could probably have doubted it'd been an accident. Or he was looking for the stone he'd forgotten to hide previously. If it's really so, then he's an inexperienced murderer. It was so stupid of him, I thought, calming myself down, despite my legs were trembling with terror. And then I realized it was me who'd acted stupidly. Brian crept up to Lindsay and took her phone out of her pocket. How come I hadn't thought of it? Calls, chats, photos. Anything could hint at the probable murderer. But I doubted that Brian was searching for the truth. He looked like a thief, glancing sideways nervously and hastily trying to unblock the phone. Then I emerged from behind my cover and said I knew the password. Scared, Brian recoiled from my extended hand. Then I tried to take the phone from him and saw the instructor's face change. Apparently, he hadn't expected such determination from me. There was either fright or despair in his eyes. I couldn't tell, but something savage had awoken in me. The righteous anger, rising from the depths, pulsed with adrenaline, and I flung myself at Brian, trying to snatch the possible evidence from his hands. What was I thinking about starting a one-on-one fight in the woods with the probable murderer for whom it was enough to slap me well enough to knock me out? But I didn't have time to realize it in full because Kate stopped us. I'd never think I'd be so happy to see her. Using Brian's confusion, I snatched the phone and ran up to Kate, counting on her support. I explained to her that Brian was searching for something in Lynn's phone, and he looked down meekly. There was no use in denying everything in front of two witnesses, so he confessed. The other night, Lindsay had used her female charm again and tried flirting with him. She'd sent him a couple of provocative texts. Brian had known he shouldn't buy into it, as it had been obvious that she was merely trying to tease Carter. But how was he supposed to explain it to the police if they found texts like waiting in the woods? Or how about hide and seek in her phone? Besides, Carter could beat him up for it too. I took the found phone to Lynn's cold finger and unblocked it. When I made sure Brian wasn't lying about the texts, I noticed Kate was wearing the same boots as Lindsay. But hers were covered in mud after the rain, while Lynn's were clean. And the grass under the body was clean and dry. Hold up, did this mean Lindsay had been here even before the rain? I told Kate about it. What time had it begun raining? At about 1 a.m. Something didn't match. Carter said she'd disappeared at about dawn, but had Lindsay really left the tent then, her boot would have been dirty and she'd have fallen onto the soaked ground. It was the first time ever that I saw Kate serious. She mentioned that the other day, when Lindsay and Carter had been quarreling in their tent, she, naturally by pure accident, had overheard some strange details. Carter had refused to introduce Lynn to his mother, claiming she had some mental problems and was a patient at an asylum. Lindsay had said it was a lame excuse, and in response, Carter slapped her across the cheek. At least Kate thought so. Could it be the reason for the tears I'd seen on Lynn's face? I didn't know what I had to look for. but sticker Kate suddenly became my ally. We approached Carter's tent. Kate pretended to be sick because of nerves and asked him to take her to the lake. And then I saw why Lindsay chose Kate as her friend. Sticker manipulated Carter so skillfully that I almost believed she had a panic attack. I waited until Kate took Carter as far as possible, and claiming I needed to find a tranquilizer, started rummaging in the tent. A notebook, a knife, underwear, nothing weird. Until I found Carter's wallet. In it, there was a photo of him embracing a beautiful smiling woman, but a part of the picture was creased. When I unfolded the second part of the picture, I saw Lynn's ex-lover, the one who'd left his family for her. No way. I knew for sure that Lynn had no idea that Carter was his son. She'd often complained that she'd never seen her boyfriend's parents. Did Carter know of the affair? I had no doubt. Lynn had often posted photos with his father on social media. Could he have possibly planned the murder to avenge his mother's humiliation? I was absolutely sure of that. With this burden on my mind, I found something else among my friend's belongings. It was an envelope with a blue ribbon and a signature. Surprise for Carter. What I found inside made me break into tears for the first time. I went to find him. After Carter took Kate to the lake, he returned to Lynn's body and was looking for something around it. Must be the stone, I thought. It's good I hid it. And then I handed Carter the envelope, something Lindsay was too late to do. Inside it, there was a pregnancy test, and it was positive. At the interrogation, Carter didn't deny his guilt. After his father had left the family, his mother developed psychological problems. He couldn't bear witnessing her hysterics, depressions, and suffering. He craved revenge. He was sure his father's lover was to blame for it all. Finding Lynn through social media wasn't hard. To my friends and me, Lindsay will forever be a lively and cheerful coquette. Too young to understand the consequences of her unrestrained seductiveness, and too life-loving to see the point at which games with feelings became too dangerous for her. And Carter? The last time I saw him in court, he looked like a living dead man. The life faded in him when, holding the test with 2 lines, he realized where his merciless desire for revenge had brought him.